for staying tuned. The program continues and our central theme is leveraging on our diversity to strengthen democracy in Nigeria in marking Democracy Day, June 12, 2020. I'm being joined by another team of guests. For my far right, I have Dr. Chidia Maduekwe. Dr. Chidia Maduekwe is a political analyst and managing director of Nigerian Film Corporation. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, and thank you, viewers, for having me.
Okay. Also, Dr. Josiah Sabo Kente, HOD Mass Communication, Nasarawa University, and former Speaker, Taraba State House of Assembly. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Welcome, Nigerians, and congratulations.
Beautiful. We have this is about the third leg of the program, and is in sustaining the theme, which is leveraging on our diversity to strengthen Nigeria's democracy. We have looked at so many fronts, but let me give you the icebreaker. Dr. Chidia, what do you make of Nigerian diversity in the present-day democracy?
Thank you, viewers. We must consider ourselves as a great country that is privileged to have the high magnitude of diversity that we experienced at the time of creation of the Nigerian state. Other countries are not so privileged to have this level of diversity, institute some structural mechanisms like lottery visa to increase their diversity. America, which is the #1 superpower, already has that mechanism. So here we don't need to give anybody lottery visa to come to Nigeria in order to enhance our diversity. And like I try to explain, even in biology, if you are not so diverse, you end up breeding on your weaknesses. So your product gets weaker and weaker over time. But if you have a diverse, sources of breeding capability, you end up having strength. So we can leverage on the strength on our diversity and build the robust nation that Manifest Destiny had already set out for us. And that has been the basis. And I believe that we are no different. We can only do it better.
Okay, Doctor. Well, Dr. Gete, the problem has been, I remember at a public lecture, a resource person renowned in Nigeria, I don't want to mention names here, has said there was a protest somewhere in Nigeria and huge crowd. And he singled out a lady and said, "Please, madam, what are they protesting?" And she said, "I don't know. Whatever they are protesting, I don't like it, so I'm following them." So, given what Dr. Chidia had said, our diversity, whether you say you are a pro or opposing group, within your group you have minorities there. How do you handle them? Within every group that says we want to be heard, if you look inwards, there is those who want to be heard even within those groups. And we have, even within your own state, Taraba State, where you come from, you have minorities within. How best can we drive on with it and carry everybody along?
Well, you see, just as Dr. Chidi said from the beginning, the founding fathers of the Nigerian nation had this idea of using our diversity as our source of strength. And for quite some time after the independence in 1960, I want to believe that we'll be able to kind of make progress in a way and manner we are able to address certain issues that to some extent has strengthened our unity as a country. But I am surprised, I don't know where we had the missing link, where we discovered that because of some kind of personal interest or some maybe ethnic or regional interest, it has to some sort of resulted to people agitating or feeling as if they are to some extent marginalized. And I want to believe that that is part of the reason why we have a lot of problems here and there. And as it is, just as you said, there are some part of this country that maybe for one reason or the other they feel as if they have not been carried along, or they have not been given that kind of opportunity to also participate in our journey to nationhood. But I strongly believe that there's still room for us to be able to come together and look at some of these issues and see how we can address these issues to give every ethnic group a sense of belonging. The whole issue is issue of recognition. Where am I coming from? What am I supposed to do? And I want to emphasize here that until we are able to understand and realize the fact that our nationalism, we have to be patriotic. We have to put the country first before any other interest. But just as I gave example of America, if you see a typical American, the first thing he tries to understand is that he is an American. Understand? He's an American, and whatever he will do to make America great, that's what he will do. But in their own case, to some extent, we find out that small or ethnic groups are, and they try to kind of look at their diversity as a way of a kind of self-serving. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they look at it as a sort of a platform for self-serving. If you don't belong to this ethnic group, you feel as if you are not popular, or you don't even benefit from certain government programs or policies. Those are the kind of things that tend to kind of affect our unity as a nation.
Class.
Okay, now, if we talk about patriotism in Nigeria,
Yeah.
you have given an example of the American case, but in Nigeria, what aspect of patriotism are you looking at? Is it ethnic patriotism, political patriotism, or which one are you talking about?
Well, I think we should look at the entire situation in a kind of all inclusive. If we talk about political patriotism, the level of political development in the country seems to kind of give us some kind of concern, because if you look at the political parties themselves, there seems to be a sort of, they lack internal democracy. These are some of the problems that tend to kind of create problems here and there. In terms of resource distribution, one part of the country is feeling we are not being adequately taken care of. So all these diversities tend to kind of create a source of disunity among the various ethnic groups in the country.
Okay. Now, Doctor, last year when we had the formal declaration of democracy in Nigeria, legalized, backed up by law, a lot of advocacies came up, and one of it, ahead of even the naming of the national stadium, the Mushida Abiola National Stadium, a guest advocated that eventually came to pass. Now, this is the second leg, and I asked one of my guests before now, I said, what are we looking at onwards to the third episode of legalized June 12 legally recognized June 12 in Nigeria? And one thing he said is, one thing to do is to look at the place of ethics and also reformed political system. What do you make of this?
Well, I agree with him, but I would like to go back to the foundation, the basics. And the foundation here is that when this very democratic day was declared by our able president, the first anniversary, he made a statement, which was that he was going to take 100 million Nigerians out of poverty, or that this country, this administration is working on taking 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years. For me, it was very symbolic, because when Abiola ran for the presidential election in 1993, I think the message was farewell to poverty. So if in recognizing June 12, the day Nigerians came together from all diverse ends of the country to affirm their belief in the fact that any Nigerian, from any religion, be it just two of the Nigerian president and vice president from the same religion, they can be elected and become president and vice president, which was a very symbolic gesture in our march on the democratic trajectory. For me, it is good to understand that. So if we understand it, we build from the foundation and said, okay, by the time we consolidate on this understanding that anybody, anywhere can be voted for and can aspire to have the highest office, and people from other ethnic or religious background can equally combine their strength to vote those kind of persons into office without minding the fact they are not from their region or their religion. In that case, we will now be utilizing the strength in our diversity to build a stronger democratic nation, as it were. So I would like us to emphasize more on that foundation, because it's when we consolidate on that, then we can start the building blocks, over time in making progress as a fully fledged democratic nation, not minding our diversity, leveraging on our diversity to build strength into what joins us together than what divides us, as a nation. So that's why I say I would rather prefer us to look at the foundation and consolidate on that, both for now and in the future.
Okay, now, Dr. Kete, I'm happy you headed a legislative arm of government at the state level. And when we say legislature is representative of the whole. At the National Assembly, that is representative of the full Nigerians. And at your level, it was the entire Taraba state.
Exactly.
Now, evolution. Within political evolution, I always see from a perspective of adaptability and adoptability.
Yeah.
Now, we had our own style of democracy, indigenous to us. Now, we adopted one that is not really indigenous to us. When can we try to marry us and that one and see where we head?
Well, I think it's a very clear case where the Nigerian Constitution has actually made it explicit as what are the roles of the parliament, especially at the state level. Even at the national level, the Constitution is very clear. The Constitution provides for the legislative arm of government to function effectively. And just as you said that we adopted the system from maybe our colonial masters of legislation. But unfortunately, just as many observers have said, that the legislature at the state level has not been given the full powers to operate. I want to commend Mr. President for his recent signing of the Executive Order 10 that seeks to give a sort of an independence to the state legislature. I strongly believe that is the only way that our democracy can be strengthened, because as it is now, the state legislative arm of government is just like a kind of a department under the executive arm, the way and manner it is operating, because they don't operate as an independent body. So their contribution to the democratic dividends at the state level is very, very minimal, as a matter of fact. So I strongly believe that if we are able to strengthen the institution of the legislature at the state level, I strongly believe we are going to have a better understanding of how democracy works, and we should to have a better a kind of give governance the better understanding of what it's supposed to be.
Okay, Dr. Chidemondukwe, your late brother, who is so rest my quote him, he said, a strong opposition is a government in waiting. So when you're in power and you're at the center, you need to listen critically and thoughtfully to opposition. Now, progressives at the center, running governance, and the place of opposition. What's your assessment after elections?
Yeah, I would think, looking at our record so far, we have walked our talk as opposition before, now in government. We have walked our talk because those things we criticized vehemently when as opposition, we have walked our talk by making sure that we eliminate them during this period of President Muhammad Buhari-led APC administration. Take, for example, today we are celebrating June 12th. And we are celebrating June 12th and making it the Democracy Day. You will recognize that in the past, while we were opposition, you had presidents who were strong, but they were not courageous. Today, we have a president who is both strong and courageous. And because he's courageous, he's able to stand out and recognize that June 12th should be a national day, not a regional day. Because making it a regional day, like some others will have tried to do, was again digging more into the things that divide us. June 12th is not about the Southwest or about Lagos. It's about the entire nation. Because on that day of June 12th, the vice president candidate who came from my area lost vote in his own community, while the SDP candidate from the Southwest and Northeast won more vote in his area. So that was a statement of democracy. And therefore, I would want to say that we walk our talk in government. We were in opposition and all these ills were going on. And we felt that if we were in power, we would do better. And I think we have done better. We have done better in the area of economy. I say so because Venezuela and Nigeria went into recession about the same time. Today, you cannot see Venezuela anywhere in the horizon of surviving out of recession. But Nigeria, within 2 years, we made a V-shaped recovery out of recession. Today, the World Bank has placed us about 25 steps from where we were before in terms of the ease of doing business. So we are not just talking as opposition. We knew what we are talking about. Today, under this global pandemic, where many nations are buckling, the economy are buckling, you can imagine Nigeria still maintaining certain measure of robust stability, because we came into government fully knowledgeable of what we are supposed to do right. We came into government when the oil was already dwindling in terms of revenue. We came into government when the foreign reserve was almost non-existent. But today, despite all the challenges we have met with, we remain stable in terms of our macroeconomic indices. We remain the #1 economy in Africa. We are also meeting up in the infrastructural deficit that never existed. I mean, they existed before we came. Look at the second Niger bridge. It's about 68% completed. It was not there. Former government usually will come and flag it off during campaign. After that, they will go back. But we in opposition at that time said it was wrong. Today, you can see that second Niger bridge, within 6 years of being in power, is already 68% being completed. I can go on and on. A Takpe rail line to the Delta was started in 1989, and in opposition we kept saying it is wrong. Now, within this administration, the people in that area can hear the hum of the train coming to Delta, which never happened before. Today, we are dependent on feeding ourselves. Before we came into power, we are importing heavily. We are importing about 20 billion. We spent about 20 billion naira to import rice in a year. You can see that was tremendous, a wasteful exercise. But look at it. We are having palliative today. I mean, we are having pandemic of COVID-19, and we are using palliative to solve it based on our reserves. Assuming we are not thinking inward in terms of the agricultural revolution, which is now positive, we wouldn't be where we are. We have about 31 fertilizer blending plant now working. They were not there before we came. The people were buying fertilizer more than they are being bought during this administration. So we have walked our talk. We were not just making noise as opposition. We knew what was wrong, and we knew how to fix it. And I proudly want to say that the administration of APC led by Muhammad Buhari has effectively fixed it. And that is what oppositions need to do, and not just to keep rambling where there is no need for that rambling.
Okay. Now, when can we have Democracy Day celebrated in Nigeria from a completely non-political perspective? For instance, the first year, it was so colorful. Eagle Square was our goal across the states. Well, no thanks to COVID-19. This year, as much as we have COVID-19, today the Moshood Abdullah National Stadium was properly christened by Mr. President. And now, moving on, besides the advocacy that we should be looking at by the next one, somebody advocated we should look at reformed political system in Nigeria. Yeah. I expect to see Democracy Day in Nigeria becoming more colorful by the years as our democracy evolves. What's your take?
Well, you see, for us to have a sort of a more elaborate celebration of Democracy Day, I want to say that strongly there's a need for the three arms of government, or the operators of the three arms of government, to show more commitment. That's what I'm saying. To show more commitment to delivering, to exercising the responsibilities as provided by in the Constitution. The executive of government members of the executive should show much more commitment in carrying out their responsibilities. Likewise, the legislative arm of government and the judiciary. Once the three arms of government are able to put in their best, I can assure you that we'll have more dividend for democracy to celebrate Democracy Day in a more elaborate and robust way.
Okay. Also joining us for this discussion is Professor Hamid Ozolo Suleiman, Professor of Public Policy Analysis and Governance. Good to have you on the program. And a happy Democracy Day 2020.
Same to you.
Marking this day amid COVID-19, compared to last year and this year and moving on, what's your impression generally?
first and foremost, let me congratulate Nigeria and Nigerians for this very historic moment. There is something very unique about this celebration compared to the previous year. First and foremost, I want to appreciate the President and his team for, transforming the June 12th to a national and very important day in Nigeria. Previously, June 12th appeared to be a southwestern affair in which the reflection was usually, greeted with a lot of foreboding and reservation about the Nigerian project. But today, June 12th has become a national celebration to reflect on the journey so far. And then, of course, all Nigerians, nobody is left out in celebrating this day and in reflecting on the lessons that we need to learn. And very importantly, too, this year's celebration is coinciding with 60 years of our independence as a sovereign nation. And of course, that is to say that the democracy we are celebrating today is 2 decades, just in excess of 2 decades, and then coinciding with 60 years of Nigerian independence. And that is a lot to reflect about. And that we need to ask ourselves fundamental question in terms of what we have achieved in the last 20 years, and then what direction we should chart for this country. To that extent, this year's celebration is significantly different from last year's celebration, in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, a lot of Nigerians are on board to join in this conversation to chart a direction for this country.
And taking you from your perspective as a policy analyst and governance, some advocacy has been made here. You have just asked the question, what direction? And some persons have said our next direction to celebrating Democracy Day in Nigeria should be looking inwards at our ethics and reformed political structure. What do you make of this?
In the previous years, up to last year, when June 12 comes, what comes to the mind of many Nigerians is the answers that we should look for to address the national question. And then, of course, many have articulated their opinion about the national question. But it does appear that there is overemphasis on the political connotation of the national question at the detriment of the much more important good governance aspect of the national question. We want to seize the occasion of the celebration today to draw attention to the need for government to de-emphasize, especially the political class, to de-emphasize the way and manner the national question is articulated to address political interest, whether at individual level or at regional or at state level, to begin to move to how we can seize the opportunity of the democratization process to ups the good governance record of this administration. And that is what we should be talking about now. And then, of course, in doing that, our politicians should try as much as possible to enlighten their constituencies on the need to look at the whole of Nigeria as a country that can achieve more than emphasizing, regional interest at the detriment of what the country can achieve, given the strength that it has. I think that will help to begin to address the minds of Nigeria to own the entire Nigerian project and to see what individuals can do to contribute to this project.
Okay, in doing justice to leveraging on our diversity to strengthen democracy in Nigeria, we try to look at democracy itself being government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And Nigeria being a huge, diverse environment. I remember one of the United States ambassador to Nigeria has said that for Nigeria to get there, it has to look inwards at its diversity. Talking about the strongest, the chain is as strong as the weakest link. Now, where is the place of the minority? Would you say that as much as we are diverse, if we have a democracy that is evolving, it's an evolving process, heading somewhere but no destination, would you say outrightly that the minority have no say in Nigeria?
Well, no, one cannot completely devoid yourself from saying that the minority cannot have the say in the political journey of this country. Certainly, the minorities have had the opportunity and they'll continue to that opportunity are very safe before them. And it depends on the angle you are trying to look at. The minority, is it participation in the political process?
Across board.
Okay, fine.
Resource control, participation in politics, electoral governance, public governance, name it.
You see, that is the more reason why I'm of the opinion that if the institutions are properly strengthened, it would certainly take care of the interests of the minority in the system, or the minority will be given the opportunity to also contribute their quota to the well-being of the country. I talk of institutional development because most of the institutions are very weak at the moment. If emphasis is given on strengthening these institutions, the democratic institutions, the economic institutions, all the aspects of the entire life of the Nigerian country, if we're able to kind of strengthen some of these institutions, I can assure you that the minority we're talking about will not even feature in any of the discussions. The agitations or the kind of crisis that we're having here and there would certainly be taken care of by this
so what's the solution? I ask this because if you have read The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli, it is said that it has all the prescriptions but no solution. Give us a solution.
That is the more reason why I say once these institutions, I'm emphasizing on strengthening of the institutions, of the various institutions of government, once they are adequately strengthened, they will certainly address some of the issues or the agitations that come from the minorities we're talking about.
Okay. As sensitive as this question is, I'll leave the same question to you, Dr. Chidi Amaduekwe.
And I land on the same ground with him. Institution strengthening. And this administration have been doing all they can to strengthen the institution. I want to tell you that there are institutional framework that exists to make everybody have an all-inclusive sense of belonging to Nigeria, which is the federal character. The federal character principle is a constitutional issue, and it is there. It's for us to practice it. If we strengthen ourselves to practice the federal character, it will not only take care of the issue of personnel and appointment, it will equally take care of allocation of socioeconomic indices all over the 6 geopolitical zone. And if you talk about aspiring to the highest office of the land, we just had somebody from one of the minority states, ethnic sections of the country, leaving office as the president of this country. So I think the whole idea that the presidency is for everybody has already been established and been met. So there is nothing like any section being excluded from it. But it's a political vehicle that is required for each and every one to aspire to the destination they need to get there. If you enter into a Mole bus that is going to Idumota, and meanwhile you want to go to Victoria Island, of course you go in the wrong direction. You have to go the one that is going to Victoria Island, if that is where you want to go to. You must enter the proper vehicle that will take you there. So when you don't enter the right vehicle that will take you to your destination, and you start having a sense of being excluded from the journey, I think you must question yourself and not the processes of the vehicle taking one from location A to location B. That is one. So you go back to the issue of strengthening the institution. Once that is being done, like it's being done under this present APC-led administration, I would think that the issue of a sense of feeling that I don't belong to this country will over time go, okay, why are we today celebrating again June 12th as the Democracy Day? It's all about making everybody have a sense of, we must not lose sight of the symbol in June 12th. Because before now, what we have been served was date for swearing in presidents. And democracy is beyond mere swearing of president. when we are confusing swearing in date for president with democracy celebration. No, this June 12th, to my mind, in modern history of Nigeria, is the date that the whole Nigeria came together to say on a democratic principle we stand. And so we are now, this administration have now recognized it and put it on a national banner so that people can plug into it and have a sense of belonging and stop crying that you are being put out, you are not recognized. Everybody is recognized under this APC-led administration of Muhammad Buhari. So everybody should please come to the table, knowing that you are part of the people, the food. If since our politics in Nigeria is make we chop, okay, we have a table called Nigeria. Everybody should feel bold to come to the table, and nobody should feel that he is being taken away from the table. Since that is that's the lingo people want to understand, it's about chopping. Okay, the table is there for everybody. Nobody is shutting the door. And that is part of the symbol of this June 12th celebration we are having today. That any part of this country is recognized. And it's an all-inclusive movement for a Nigerian nationhood.
Professor Hamid, visibility in governance across board is my next concern. I ask you this. Pick two children within the age bracket or age governance of band of say between 10 and 12 across board and put them in a hall. Lock up that hall, give them the next 6 hours. When you open that hall, you find a collegiate of Nigerians and Nigeria. But why is it that within the political space, even if you lock us in for the next 2 years, when we open the door, we come from a perspective of political leanings and interest groups, ethnic leanings. Where can we diffuse that?
The question you have asked, lies at the heart of the Nigerian problem. But again, the country we have is so beautiful and has so much prospect that I would love to compare it to a bouquet of flowers. Of course, you are familiar with bouquet of flowers. You made an analogy now. Let me make this one to buttress your point. And in this bouquet, you have a variety of flowers with different colors. It doesn't take time for you to behold it and the beauty of that bouquet from a distance. That is what the diversity of Nigeria represents, and which we must appreciate, protect, and project at all times. But unfortunately, like I said earlier in my opening remarks, that the way and manner our governing elite approach the national question, leaves much to be desired. Of course, the national question is characteristics of, federative units, complex federation like Nigeria. But in answering this national question, our governing elite seems to have, overflogged the political dimension of the national question to the detriment of the much more important, good governance, economic development dimensions of the national question. In this country, in an effort to build our nation, a number of political and constitutional conferences have been, held in this country. If you take it from the very recent time in contemporary Nigeria, starting from the Babangida, political bureau, down to Abacha, from Abacha down to Obasanjo, then Jonathan. If you study the report of the conference, very well, you find out that, with the exception of the Obasanjo's conference report, all other reports in their recommendation said little or nothing about, good governance. And I'll explain. The Obasanjo's, political conference report, in one of its recommendations, suggested that Chapter 2 on fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy, and then Chapter 4 on fundamental human rights should be collapsed into one. And what that suggests is that there will be no more argument about the justiciability of the citizens' rights that are contained in Chapter 2 of the Constitution under fundamental objectives and directive principle of state policy. Of course, in it, we have rights to education, health, social well-being, security, and a whole lot of them that are not justiciable. And there has been a lot of debate going on how we can make it justiciable in order to institute good governance practice in this country. It was only the Obasanjo conference report that this suggested that. And that, to me, it does not speak well about the governing elite, who in the first place constitute the various conferences. That of all the conferences we have had, only one has said something that is suggestive of the concern of the governing elite on the need for good governance. And that is the way we should go. And then it is for that reason that some of us have concluded that the way and manner the governing elite approaches the national question is to further their enlightened self-interest, as opposed to building this nation, making it more cohesive, building bridges, and then promoting good governance in this country. And that explains exactly why Nigerians will behave the way we have just described if you keep them in such a controlled experimental situation.
Okay, Prof. Now, talking about good governance, our founding fathers had a dream for Nigeria. They talked Nigeria, they slept Nigeria, and they dreamt Nigeria. They didn't dream Igbo, they didn't dream Hausa, they didn't dream Yoruba, they didn't dream Efu, they didn't dream Yaka, but Nigeria. Now, next report talks about a national hero, Tafawa Balewa.
The name Tafawa Balewa will always ring a bell in Nigeria. It is a name that the country's history cannot be complete without it perhaps being written on the first page. One need not to look far to know that Abubakar Tafawa Balewa is highly regarded in Nigeria. The name, and sometimes even the picture of the bearer, keeps appearing in different sectors of the country. Is it Nigerian currency, in the naming of a university, a stadium, a national square, and even major streets in most big cities in the country? Abubakar Tafawa Balewa is one of the 3 officially recognized national heroes in Nigeria, the 2 others being his contemporary, late Nnamdi Azikiwe and General Murtala Ramat Mohammed. Tafawa Balewa now lies in a tomb in the heart of Bauchi city. It was the compound of the then Ajia of Bauchi, where the late Prime Minister was buried when he was assassinated, along with other leaders in the first military coup of 1966. Government, however, took over the house in 1979 and constructed this edifice to immortalize the honorable gentleman. A visit to the late Prime Minister's tomb is worth the while, any day, any time. The only thing written here is Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, 1912 to 1966. But I would like to say, here lies a man who was Nigeria's first foreign affairs minister and the first and only prime minister Nigeria has ever had. The golden voice of Africa, they call him, a nationalist, a patriot, who lost his life in the course of active service for Nigeria. The edifice houses the tomb, a library, conference hall, and auditoriums. There is a room where his personal belongings are kept. 2 caps, a radio, a small black and white TV set, 3 wristwatches, a sword presented to the late Prime Minister as gift by the Sardana of Sokoto Alhaji Ahmadu Bello on the occasion of Nigeria's independence in 1960. Some memos written by the late Prime Minister and an 818-page book, The Right Honorable Gentleman, written by a white man, Trevor Clark, which chronicles the lives and times of Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, are some of the archival and historical attractions in the place. Even though I have heard much, seen in pictures and screen of the tomb, this visit is not only worth the while, but also makes me appreciate more the labor of our heroes past. Having seen and heard many things from the curator and custodian of the tomb, I was curious to know what and how his family was faring in his absence. The large family he left has been able to live a simple life that the late teacher, politician was known for. Yalwa Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, who was 6 when the Prime Minister was killed, recalls how they lived just like other children despite having a Prime Minister as father.
He made us realize we are not any special. He ensured that we relate and mix with everyone, both at school and home.
That Malama Yalwa says has prepared them for the life they now live. Indeed, the labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain.
I believe you had it insightful in that last report and looked at the hero, Tafawa Balewa. Now, when you talk about the leadership question in Nigeria, just before we went on to that report, Professor Hamid talked about a particular convergence that singled out good governance as an issue. Now, let's look at the leadership question in Nigeria. Most times they say, when you point one finger, the rest 4 points at you. And I always want to situate the leadership question of Nigeria to that. But this administration, led by Muhammadu Buhari, came with 3 major planks: the economy, also against corruption, and security. From the perspective of good governance, institutions, constitutionality, what's your assessment?
Well, I have always told people that cares to listen that President Muhammadu Buhari has done his best. He has brought back some sense of a kind of confidence in governance because of his approach to governance, as a matter of fact. This is because this is a president that, no matter the amount of maybe insult coming from maybe Professor mentioned it, our political elite, he seems not to even bother himself. He's more concerned with what is before him, and he seems to be giving kind of some sort of elaborate attention to the act of governance. Now, you will understand the fact that some of these political elites that are supposed to also use our diversity to a kind of strengthen our democratic process are the ones that are making some sort of statements that derail or a kind of divide most of the segments of the country. So I strongly believe that, it is very, very important that we understand the fact that this administration inherited a myriad of problems that ordinarily, if you had allowed us to continue maybe the way we were going, we would have been where we are today. You mentioned the the mantra that the present administration is came into with to pursue: the issue of security, the issue of corruption, and the issue of what is the third issue? Even the issue of economy. The economy. Now, I will kind of score the administration high in all the 3 aspects or the 3 key themes which they are operating on. Like the issue of security, I agreed the security is somehow not too stable because of the activities of the insurgents in the northeast, the armed bandits in the northwest, kidnapping in other parts of the country, and all manners of high crime taking place here and there. But as I said earlier on, if the various institutions of government are adequately strengthened, I strongly believe that most of these insecurity issues will be addressed. If you talk about issue of economy, my colleague here, doctor, has actually given us an insight into how the administration is able to maneuver its way out of recession and is trying to some extent kind of sustain the economic policies to the level that we are today. And then the economic policies also, as I said earlier on, the administration has done its best. But what is lacking now is the commitment of other politicians, the political class, to give the administration the required advice or the required direction as to take to ensure that some of these challenges are adequately addressed. You find people criticize the government without even advancing or suggesting ways through which some of these issues can be addressed. I strongly believe if you are making a sort of a constructive criticism, it is also very, very important for you to now suggest ways through which some of these issues can be addressed. I strongly believe if we're able to put our heads together, I talked about patriotism initially. If we are patriotic to the Nigerian nation and we're able to see things that are not going the right way and we're able to suggest way and manner through which some of these things can be addressed, I strongly believe that Nigeria is a very great country and the prospect is, the future looks very bright.
Okay, Doctor, what's your line of thoughts in this direction?
Yeah.
How to leave it open?
Yeah, I will address it from a medical, angle. Healer, you are having a neck pain, a very bad neck injury that is making you even almost feel asphyxiated. And you are relieved of that. All the pains, all the weight and the fact that you almost seeing stars, passing away. You have forgotten that. You now have some other, malady elsewhere, like on the leg. But when it was on the neck, you were like getting suffocated. You asphyxiated. You can't breathe. But now it's on the leg. You are breathing well. You are walking around. Now you start remembering the knee pain on the leg. And you want to think that nothing has happened at all to cure you of your past malady. So this is where we find ourselves in Nigeria. Before this present administration came to office, almost a large chunk of our sovereignty were under alien flag, and our food security was heavily threatened, and that was the focus of it. Abuja was not safe, no place was safe. Kano, Kaduna, be it anywhere, there was threat over the land, over the whole nation. And this administration came because that was while they campaigned that they were going to take care of the insurgency, and they took care of it, let's say 90% or thereabout. Some other issues start coming from elsewhere. We now forget that certain advances and resolution had been made substantially, more than 70-80%, about the primary thing that was there before the administration came into play. We are now more worried, which is rightly so. But let us know that we had an issue, it is being solved, or it's been solved to a great extent. Then the question to ask ourselves, this new challenge, is there anything that needs to be done that we are not doing? But again, if we see that we are, as a nation, trying to solve the problem, because these are challenges that came as a result of long years of disregard to solving those challenges. They didn't just happen overnight during this administration. Banditry, cattle rustling has been going on in very small manner. I was just being briefed recently that I remember in the 90s when we ran for the election in this one we are celebrating now, between Abuja and Kaduna, there were many farms on the highway between Abuja and Kaduna, farms with there were many ranches. But today you don't find anybody having farm along this Kaduna Abuja road, because they started closing even before the year, in 2003 and 2005 and 2010. They were closing because cattle rustlers were coming to those farms to make it impossible for people heading those cattle to be there. And we did nothing. After they have cleared those farms along Kaduna, Abuja Road and other places, they became more emboldened. Then Libya crumbled. A lot of small arms, moved into the country from diverse borders, which is rightly so. Even America, with the wall on the Mexican border, is still having drugs coming into America from South America, be it Mexico or Colombia. How much less Nigeria? So when we blame ourselves that government is not doing that, we're not being realistic, because there is where will all the soldiers or the custom or immigration people be? Where are they going to mount every inch of the soil? So unfortunately, this is the challenge we are faced now. All right. The question now is that, are we doing anything towards it? Yes. the government is acquiring many platforms, modern platforms that were never there before. Some of the fighter jets and helicopter gunships that are being ordered, they were never in our inventory, have now been supplied. Before now, Nigerians were dependent on MRAP, imported, but we are now manufacturing our own MRAP, Ezugo, indigenously made, very and very affordable too. And so we are building capacity, we are building enablement to allow our strong men and women in uniform to take care of this ugly dimension, which is not only in Nigeria, it is a global thing. And it seems to be coming our show for obvious reasons, for the reasons for which we stand to be the #1 power in Africa. So, and #1 food basket, as the case may be. So we are not surprised that sometimes we attract some of this kind of situation. Mali next door, is worse hit. Half of the country is not even inhabited. It's not under the sovereign management of the legitimate, government. But in Nigeria, it is not so. So I want to say that we are making good progress. We are having challenges, but we are doing what we need to do to surmount them. It is not the same thing as we are doing nothing to surmount them. And so we should be able to look at where are the positives and then build on our strength than on our weaknesses. We should be able to commend ourselves, the ones we have done right, so that we can even be encouraged to secure more. There is no doubt there is challenge to our sovereign interest. There is no doubt there is challenge to our security. But we also have challenge to the economy. But we are, rolling over it. It was heartwarming to hear the other day the president ordered a release of grain, several metric tons from our reserves. Many people didn't know that we had reserves of grain, food security, which means that this administration again is walking their talk by making sure they provide food security. Many people don't even know, like I'm talking now, that Nigerians are manufacturing their own MRAP. And so many things our men in uniform, in technology, are breaking the barriers to make sure that we contain this insurgents. If we know that these insurgents are heavily funded from outside the shores of this country, under situations that are a target to our sovereignty, we will work with government to give support to government to make sure that the fight against insurgency and militancy are sustained. And that is where I think we are right now.
Okay, most times when you take a critical look or copious look at history, you see that history helps societies to leapfrog. But when we return, beginning from Professor Hamid Suleiman, we shall be looking at the place of history, sustainability, continuity, and the place of engagements. But after this report, put together by Leko Agbode, titled June 12 and the Place of the Ogun People.
In 1993, Nigeria held an election believed to be the fairest, most credible and peaceful in the history of the country.
The people of this country went to polls on Saturday, June 12, 1993, and without let or hindrance chose me as their president.
Late Chief M.K. Abiola, a major character and winner in that presidential race, but he was denied this victory by the former military junta, General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, who annulled the election. Expectedly, his action triggered unprecedented crisis across the country.
Yes, democracy since 1999. Largely, the struggle was led by the Yorubas. Our late Papa, Abraham Adesoya, was our leader. There are people like Professor Olishoyinka.
The annulment of the election and the crisis that ensued as a result of that was because it was an acceptable election across the board. It was adjudged by both Nigerians and foreigners as a free and fair election.
This led to what can be described as unprecedented democratic governance, with political actors and social activists in the front line of the struggle, with great personalities of Ogun State extraction in the forefront.
Today we have Vice President Oshibaju. All men that you should be proud of in terms of their intellectual capabilities, in terms of what they bring in terms of their background and antecedents. Abiola, we've had that. We've had Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. Before that, we have Ernest Shoneko, okay, and who was the interim president, and he was the commander-in-chief.
Togo State has been able to contribute into democracy in Nigeria. We have played a lot of roles, right from Awolowo day. Awolowo too did a lot.
Well, I say that the Abdulsalam government tried to compensate the Yorubas by talking to the other tribes to leave the presidency for the Yorubas in 1999. That was when Olusegun Obasanjo was voted in as president.
21 years after, the people of Ogun State are still proud of the exemplary leadership role played by late Chief Moshood Kashimawo Abiola and Nidijin of Ogun State, which has remained indelible in the history of Nigerian democracy.
No single individual in this country that have crisscrossed the length and breadth of Nigeria to get the type of democratic support that he got from the entire people of Nigeria on the June 12. So he's the martyr of democracy.
As the nation marks the maiden edition of June 12 Democracy Day, Nigerians thanked President Muhammadu Buhari for honoring the sacrificial contributions of late Chief MKO Abiola.
Agreed to it that MKO won the June 12, 1993 election and that he deserved to be president of this country. And his soul must recognize him like that. Then I give it to Mr. President as a man of honor and integrity.
He did something so great. No one would expect that he would be the one to do it. You know, after how many years? All that we have mentioned now, all of them are actually very, very happy.
They appealed to the government to sustain the dreams of the late Chief MKO Abiola, which summarily is about taking Nigerians out of poverty.
A report by Lekwa Bodet looked at June 12 and the people of Ogun State, the position of the people of Ogun State. Professor Hamid, now I heard a former governor within that period talked about the fact that after governance then you think about engagement, you think about inclusivity beyond political lineage. So what's your assessment and what is your maybe line of thought regarding engagements and in governance in Nigeria as we move on with Democracy Day in Nigeria?
History has a way of throwing up opportunities for a nation to, correct its mistakes. The last 60 years of Nigeria's existence have been very eventful, with a lot of historical milestones. We have fought a civil war as a result of the deep-seated mistrust among, first-generation politicians of that time. We came out of that war strong, and the lesson we learned from that was that it is better, you understand, to figure it out together for the benefit of all of us than to go our various ways. Nigeria was fortunate to be part of the second wave democratization of the early 80s. That process was truncated by a coup. And of course, the long spell of military administration that we had after then has also taught us some lesson. We've had the opportunity to be part of the third wave that started in the late 90s. And today we are celebrating 21 years of unbroken democratization process. We have got a lot of lessons to learn. And what is important, therefore, is for us to seize the flood of this democratization tide, to secure the political environment, the political space, for more engagement between the citizens and the government. And in that respect, I want to say that Nigeria has done very badly. In the last 20 years, we have had, a resurgence of civil society organizations that are engaging with government in various areas of policy interest. And of course, when that momentum is sustained and government, create a legal framework to secure that process of engagement, the result will be good governance, for the country, and the citizens will be better off. But one major challenge is this insecurity that we have in the country. And of course, the government is not doing very badly in that area, but the government, I must tell you, needs to do more, because apart from the intermittent attacks that defenseless locals in the northeast, for example, and many other parts of the country suffer in the hands of bandits and Boko Haram, many Nigerians are now living in constant foreboding, constant fear of what will happen next. And of course, when you are in that constant fear of what will happen next, it stifles initiative. Individuals who have plans to do something to better their lots, by taking advantage of various policies of government on entrepreneurial development and all of that, will not be able to do that. So it is important, therefore, that while the government fight this, insurgency, banditry, and then secure the lives of Nigerians, more, they need to constantly talk to Nigerians. They need to engage in strategic communications, you understand, to convince Nigeria, to, restore hope and confidence, back to Nigeria, that all is well and that it is just a question of time for us to get there, and people can go about their businesses without let or hindrance and make their contribution to the development of this country.
Sabo, or should I say Josiah? Yeah. Now, within the domain of governance, engagements, inclusivity, what's your own assessment, and how do you think we should go? For instance, if I win election as a local government chairman, if I win election as a governor, if I become a president to the electoral process, I came to a political process, the platform of a political party, right? Now, after elections, must I run governance with only people of my political party? So within the domain of governance, engagement.
Well, I don't want to believe that, I don't believe in this philosophy or idea of winner takes all. I believe in the kind of inclusive governance. It is only in this country where you see somebody will run an election, and after winning election, only his political club, in quote, who seems to be part or to participate in the act of governance. Unlike the examples that we have of, let me just start an example of the United States of America. I was there when President Barack Obama was elected, and before his inauguration, you find out that experts, scientists, bureaucrats, civil society organizations, individuals, professionals, most of them were some sort of sending in emails, trying to kind of inform him or try to kind of find out from him what can they do to assist him by the time he assumes office as the President of the United States of America. But unfortunately, in this country, we are in a situation whereby once you win an election, the next thing, instead of people coming with ideas as to how to even engage, to form part of the government, to assist you in the act of governance, people, you see CVs flying left, right, center, people looking for appointments. That is one major aspect of what I've been able to observe from independence today. But once you win an election in this country, it seems as if people try to kind of send in their CVs for, instead of trying to kind of advise or kind of profile or project things that you need to do to kind of enhance the act of governance, they will send in their CVs looking for appointment. And some of them, in the event that you're unable to even offer them such appointment, they go into opposition. There are all manners of criticism that have no direction at all. Somebody, if you find out, even most of those that are criticizing this government, go down the drain, you find out that it's either in one or the other, they look for one or the other, they're able to have it. So I strongly believe that once you're able to win election, it is very, very important to assemble professionals, to assemble experts that will help you build up the manifesto through which you actually use in campaigning. to win, to get to such an office. What if you're a local government chairman? I strongly believe that you should have an agenda. You see, one major problem I've also discovered of recent about this country is that it seems as if we don't even have an agenda. We don't have a vision that we want to, maybe the level to which we want to take the country to. I know we had Vision 2020 before. Honestly, anyway, recently I told someone that I wish that Vision 2020 would have been another thing different from what we are seeing now, because I thought the COVID-19 pandemic we are passing through is the Vision 2020 we had. No. But I strongly believe that once you have an agenda, you have a program that you want to take, you want to drive. Once you are elected, you should be able to put that program on the table and make sure you implement such policies to its fulfillment so that you're able to fulfill your campaign promises. You understand? But as it is now, you find out that it's a situation where some people feel as if it should be kind of winner takes all. Once they win election, they don't want any other political party or any other individual from other political association to even come near them. That is not the best way to go. As maybe there is to be a sort of an inclusive government. You understand? But on this note, I want to maybe to some extent commend Mr. President, because at the international level, I see him nominating people that were also part of the previous government of the PDP. But are also part of the government that is kind of those that he's even nominating for international position. And his choice support, I strongly believe the zeal or the spirit behind that is to ensure to enhance development of the continent and Nigeria in particular.
All right. Dr. Chidia, now one of the problems we have in the public governance, but we're talking democracy here, some people say democracy is expensive. Yet they say it still remains the best form of government. As much as we are still thinking towards maybe adding a modicum of our traditional morals to add to it, to fine-tune it. Now, we hear government talk about healthcare, housing, infrastructure, name it. In looking at this, one place we have wastages over the years has been the area of lack of continuity. Continuity in governance in a democracy. What's your line of thought?
My line of thought is that we use this present administration as example. When the Mohamed Buhari-led administration, APC, came into power, they continued. They continued with all the programs that the former PDP government had bettered or initiated, as it were. Because this administration believes in continuity. So long as that program is for you are in government in order to enhance the welfare of the citizenry. So why must you have a legacy project attached to your name if there's already a project begun by this country, by other people before you, which is for the good of the citizens of Nigeria? So, and when this administration started doing all that, the opposition started labeling it as an administration without initiative. Administration that's always claiming to finish what another one started. But it's waste of money. If you had started something and I come into office and I don't complete it. So I think this administration is living by example to the question you raised, which is there is continuity. The Treasury single account system was initiated by the past administration, but this administration have used it to plug wastages and leakages to the extent that we are able to manage our budget better in terms of resources than we were doing in the past. Today we have up to 2 trillion naira going into capital vote. It wasn't so before. I mean, we have up to 40-60% performance of our capital. In the past, you can hardly achieve up to 10% in a year. So because this administration believes in continuity, we have taken some of those initiatives by the past administration and it's being continued. So I don't think we need to discuss the matter, because the examples are too many to list here. Well, I would say that this administration is one that continues with what has been in place, so long as it's for the good of the citizens. But then the opposition again will not factor themselves into it. Instead of clapping hands for the successes being recorded, they now blame this administration for lacking initiative. It is in line with what is the common good. Then you raise the issue of appointment. I want to say that, again, sometimes if you appoint those majorly that did not work with you to be in government, you have instances of, lack of commitment, because the visioning, they were not part of the visioning. And so for them, coming into government is just about, like some politician would have said, come and chop. And so they see it from that come and chop point of view. Not to say they will feel ashamed if this government did not deliver. Take, for example, the social intervention program of this administration is the biggest in Africa. None had existed before it. So you need somebody who had the vision, or who shares the vision of Mr. President to lead the charge in executing the social intervention program, because this is a legacy project which the present administration want to leave with the people. Because when this president was going around campaigning, you saw the mammoth crowd that were coming, to meet him at many campaigns, and the question was, what is it that I can do to meet up with somehow the needs of this sea of heads that have gathered? Sometimes they don't gather, they don't even want him to speak. They will just say, you can go, you don't need to come out of the car. So he had to come up, and again, considering the level of poverty in the land, this idea of social intervention program need to be, put into place. And so you need somebody who shares the passion of Mr. President to take charge and make sure that this social, I'm just using as an example, trickles down to the people. Otherwise, if you put somebody who doesn't share the vision of Mr. President, you will run into a very embarrassing situation.
Okay. Professor Hamid, one challenge we face within the ambit of social contract, by extension democratic governance, is the place of sustainability. As much as maybe you show evidence of continuity, how sustainable is the continuity? COVID has taught so many nations of the world that any component or idea where you don't have an element of sustainability, it amounts to naught. So what's your position regarding sustainability in governance?
I understand your question very well. It is also inevitably connected to the question that has just been addressed by my colleague concerning policy reversal, policy sustainability, or policy somersault, if you like. And I want to say that when you talk about sustainability in governance, you will first, admit that policy, reversal is an integral part of the politics of governance, in Africa. Be that as it may, it is also important for a government that, has good intention, that meant well, that has, very strong and attractive moral credentials, to treat this politics of governance with a lot of circumspection. For example, if a government comes into power to inherit, a project or meets a policy in place, there are two fundamental questions that should be asked. The viability of that policy, if it has to be continued with. And then the second question will be, given the present, economic situation at the time the new government comes into power, does the government have the resources to continue with that project? How urgent is that project to the overarching policy of the new administration? These are the two very important questions that should be, addressed. So talking about viability first, you said government will have to look at what value is this policy, is this project adding, to the Nigerian development experience. If it's going to add as much, then of course government will key into it. I'll give an example. The second Niger bridge, the debate on it has been in the public domain for a very long time now. when this current administration came on board and discovered that the previous government had started something, there was no debate about the viability of that project. What government simply did was to key in. And of course, a lot of Nigerians are applauding government effort in that direction. And there are also many projects out there that government had decided to, truncate. Not because they do not see it as a project that requires government attention, but because given the current economic situation of the country, some of those projects might not be of immediate use at the moment. And then that is the situation. So sustainability in governance, therefore, must first look at what are the immediate concerns of government that connect directly to citizens' welfare. And I'll mention another area, the issue of inclusiveness, which you talked about. When the government came on board, the government discovered that, look, inclusiveness, not in the area of appointments, but in the area of, putting in place a policy of government that would, admit a critical mass of the citizens into, taking part in the economic benefits of this country. And that is why government felt that, look, a large number of the youthful population have been left out. A large number of vulnerable persons who are poor have been left out. Government said, okay, we are going to come up with a social welfare program that will include as many as possible, and of course that will be reviewed periodically to admit more people into it. We have a number of them in place now. And that project, I want to believe, has been applauded by Nigerians, who are not only those who are benefiting from it, but also those who have also identified it as an important policy of government on inclusiveness. So overall, all of these issues of sustainability, continuity of policy, truncating policy, and all of that, they all connect to leadership value. They all connect to patriotism. They all connect to what the government of the day has in mind, for Nigerians. How does it want to make a difference? Difference that can be, commended by Nigerians, against the backdrop of what the country has experienced in the past. It connects to that value. And that is why, before this session came up, one of my colleagues, the professor of law, spoke, copiously about value in leadership. What is the intention of those who are, coming into the government, to serve. And for me, it reminds me of a program we had on AIT in 2015 when the Buhari government came on board. It was a live program, and on that day, the list of ministerial nominees were being considered in the National Assembly. The prospective ministers were being screened, and the program was also going on. And I made a comment. I said, look, it is not possible, talking about leadership, values in leadership, it is practically impossible for the president to recruit ministers from heaven. If it were possible, the president would have simply written a letter to God Almighty to ask him to recruit angels for him to come and lead the country. But it's not possible. He will still have to look within.
Let me hold you there, Professor Hamid. I'll come back to you. Professor Hamid. Let me hold you there. Now, quickly, as we wrap up this segment, let me ask this. If you take a look at the tourism calendar of Nigeria, there are a lot of festivals we look up to. We want to see it come. We wait for it. From my climb, there's a festival called Leboku. We look up to it. Now, as we move on with Democracy Day in Nigeria, how do we make it such a manner that Nigerians, wherever they are, they look up to Democracy Day, they come from wherever, and we have it a big show in Nigeria as we wrap up?
Well, I think my thought along this line is for the government to show more commitment and transparency, as well as accountability in the management of public funds and government policies. I want to see how the media itself also can kind of do the watchdog responsibility properly, so that citizens will have the opportunity of knowing what the government has done or what the government is doing. I strongly believe if all these put together, and I had mentioned the issue of strengthening government institutions. I've talked about the three arms of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, to show more commitment to transparency and accountability in the act of their responsibilities. I strongly believe all this put together, as Professor captured earlier, will kind of give us a high sense of patriotism, or will show patriotism to the Nigerian nation, and by that we'll have the cause to celebrate Democracy Day in a bigger and a more robust manner, that every Nigerian will feel proud to be a citizen of this country.
Okay. Before I take on Professor Chidia to give his last word and we'll sign off this segment, let's take this report titled Heroine of Democracy in Nigeria, put together by Jennifer Igwe.
Alhaja Kudirat Abiola may have untimely joined her ancestors in the great beyond, but her pro-democracy impact and legacies still resonate in Nigeria. Kudirat Abiola was a mother, successful entrepreneur, and supporter of educational and empowerment initiatives before her husband, Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola, contested for the annulled June 12 election in 1993. Upon his incarceration in 1994, Kudirat stepped up and fought actively with other pro-democracy campaigners to uphold the mandate of that election, which her husband championed.
She had 7 children, but she looked at the whole country as a whole and said to herself, let's do something different for as many people as possible. So she sacrificed her own personal interest for the general good.
She was able to get Pegasin to go on strike. This was like the longest strike in Nigerian history of oil workers. She got them to go on strike for 2 weeks. And this was a feat that nobody would ever have thought would have been possible, especially coming from being, ushered or being orchestrated by a woman.
To better appreciate her role in the struggle, I visited renowned activist Joe Oki Odumake, who was one of those who fought alongside Kudirat Abiola and other martyrs in that era.
This woman, Kudirat Abiola, died for a collective struggle. It's a collective responsibility in ensuring that we keep all her ideals and her memories alive. She prefers you must be accountable. When she gives assignments, when they were assisting leaflets, all other things, she likes details. You must give accounts of what she ate corruption with a passion.
In recognition of her immense contribution to the democratic cause, Radio Freedom, a station that amplified the voice of the resistance against the military rule, was renamed Radio Kudirat after her assassination. Years later, the popular Oregun Road in Ikeja was also renamed Kudirat Abiola Way. This area motorway in the heart of Ikeja was where Alhaja Kudirat Abiola was killed on the 4th of June 1996 in her car. A monument has been erected in her honor and all those who contributed to that struggle in that era. There is also a park named after her right in front of the cenotaph.
Well, back to the studio. Dr. Hamid made his conclusion first, Dr. Josiah did, and Dr. Sidia, very last word. What do we look up to anxiously for the next Democracy Day? Few words.
For the next Democracy Day, once we are able to overcome the pandemic and, of course, the insecurity in the land, one can now start thinking of that kind of robust exhibition of pageantry that you expect. But I do think that some of these other things we don't have the control over, the pandemic that came this year, and of course the insurgency and insecurity that had existed even from the PDP administration. I don't expect that we should start gathering at Ego Square to be the kind of Nigerians that we desire to be.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Well, starting from Professor Hamid Ozolu Suleiman, Professor of Public Policy Analysis, thanks so much for being on the program, Prof.
Talking about what we should look forward to in the next June 12th celebration.
On some other time. Thank you so much.
Also alive in good health. We are looking forward to a greater Nigeria where insecurity will become history. We are looking forward to a greater Nigeria where inequality would have been reduced to its barest minimum. We are looking forward to a greater Nigeria where Nigeria would have realized the strength in our diversity, and we would leverage on that to become more cohesive. We are looking forward to a Nigeria where we can be counted as one of the strongest countries in the world, economically, politically, and socially.
Thank you so much, Professor Hamid Suleiman. Thank you. And back here, Dr. Josiah Sabo Kente. It was nice having you on the program.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Sabo is the head of Department Mass Communications, National University, and Dr. Chidia Maduekwe is the Managing Director, Nigeria Film Corporation. It was nice having you on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, viewers.
At this point, we must say we put a close to the live segment of the studio. Other programs marking Democracy Day 2020 will continue, and in signing of the studio, on behalf of all of us, we will launch the documentary titled Democracy, June 12, the Elixir of Nigeria Democracy.